Hello, this is Luna Gajewski from Prevention Ed, a global substance use prevention organization, bringing you another Prevention Ed short, this time about energy drinks and the teenage brain. There are a few reasons we're separating the conversation around caffeine in general and energy drinks specifically, one of them being that energy drinks just deliver caffeine in high enough doses to result in a qualitatively different conversation effect on the body, as well as containing less regulated, less studied, lesser known stimulants like guarana and taurine. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends limiting caffeine for adolescents to a maximum of 100 milligrams per day. Many popular energy drinks contain double this limit, 200, 180, 150 milligrams caffeine, very common in single beverages. Nearly all of these energy drinks, with one exception of the tiny Red Bull can, which is 80 milligrams, nearly all of these products exceed it, and they're not required to list the milligrams of guarana or taurine in the same way that they're required to list caffeine content. The American Academy of Pediatrics advises against all consumption of these other stimulants for adolescents specifically. We're also talking about energy drinks because of how much they're trending in use. These are numbers from the most recent Monitoring the Future survey out of University of Michigan, which is administered in public schools across the country. These are rates of daily use. So most other substances we measure in past 30 days use, but this is daily use. 18% of 12th graders, more than 1 in 10 10th graders, and more than 1 in 10 8th graders as well, which is concerning given this correlation that we see between early energy drink use and the increased likelihood of another substance use behavior later on in adolescence. There are some unique vulnerabilities of the teenage developing brain to caffeine. The developing brain is more sensitive to the effects of caffeine, which can disrupt sleep regulation, emotional control, reward sensitivity, all critical elements of developing neural pathways. One can only imagine how disrupting these very critical processes repeatedly throughout adolescence impacts someone's brain development. We see some myth busting around caffeine being a cognitive enhancement. Higher caffeine intake in youth is linked to reduced performance in memory, attention, and processing speed. We also see behavioral and emotional impacts, including, conduct at school, anxiety, mood disturbances, all of which can be framed as risk factors for other issues or concerning behaviors such as substance use. So teens use caffeine for many reasons. One of them is peer influence and branding, how they're being marketed to and perceived social norms among peers. Another one that's important for adults and educators to consider is academic and athletic pressure. These products are often marketed as performance enhancing, and students are under high stress to achieve. And then we see fatigue from these demanding school schedules, often with those early starts, long days with extracurriculars, and students are seeking relief from that fatigue. Of course, we know that that can create a cycle of dependency. And all these factors are contributing to teens' decision to use in a broader context of lack of information. Teenagers lack information about risk. They lack information on the substances in these products. They lack information about brain development and how those critical processes might be impaired by high dosages of caffeine. The marketing piece is a big one, and we can draw many parallels between the marketing of other substances, namely how tobacco was once marketed and how we see vapes to a certain extent marketed today. However, energy drinks perhaps more sinister because they escape a lot of the regulations that were hard fought and won against the tobacco industry, limiting their abilities to legally market towards young people. Energy drinks don't have those same regulations, and we see all kinds of athletic sponsorships, youth-focused messaging, flavors, colors, etc. The marketing is aggressive and adult-coded, preying on teenagers yearning for identity, independence, etc. And we also see this functional language around energy and mental boosts in performance, focus, stamina, etc. that mimics supplemental and pharmaceutical branding and achieves psychologically that low perception of risk that we see all substance industries struggling to achieve. Speaking of consequences that teens might not be aware of, sleep disruption is number one. We talk about sleep being the foundation of mental and physical well-being. Caffeine intake, especially in high dosages, especially within 8 to 9 hours of bedtime, can drastically impair sleep quality, which cascades into academic, mood, health problems, etc. We see increased risks of anxiety, irritability, and conduct issues with these high dosages of stimulants being introduced to the central nervous system. And energy drink overuse has been associated with emergency room visits and cardiac symptoms in teens. I think for all ages, the number is over 2,000 emergency room visits per year in this country due to energy drink overuse. And several deaths and life-threatening cardiac rhythm abnormalities have been observed due to energy drink consumption, especially when co-ingested with other recreational substances. So what can parents and educators do? It starts with education, informing teens about the risks and about the guidelines that we mentioned earlier. The American Association of Pediatrics say less than 100 milligrams of caffeine for ages 12 through 18, no guarana, taurine. Also having conversations about the half-life of caffeine and when in the day that's optimal to consume. Adults can advocate for policy changes that limit the availability or permissiveness around energy drink consumption on campus. Really important is modeling behavior. So modeling healthy beverage choices, modeling healthy ways of performance improvement can majorly influence our young people. And like we say with any substance, listening to the things our teens are saying about energy drinks, caffeine, etc., and taking those opportunities to engage in thoughtful conversation, unpacking branding, the industry, social norms, sharing information you might have, and having the courage to ask those questions together about things you don't know. We always emphasize in our work with educators and parents that the prevention conversation is not one 60-minute conversation about energy drinks. It's 60 one-minute conversations throughout the year about energy drinks. They're being inundated with the marketing, perceiving peer use, energy drink content on social media, and those sources are getting a lot of reps in. And likewise, we need to show up consistently in rounding out this conversation about risk on this subject. So thanks for listening to another Prevention Ed Short. If you'd like to be informed and updated on the latest substance use trends, feel free to sign up for our mailing list. If you think your school or community would be a good fit for partnering with Prevention Ed to bring the latest information about risk to your students, feel free to reach out to schools@preventioned.org. Thanks so much for listening.